Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Anna Scaife is a jewellery designer, trainer, author and wellness coach. She has some top tips for how regulating the nervous system can help you with networking. Thank you very much for being my guest on the podcast today, Anna.
Absolute pleasure, Liz. Thanks for having me.
Now, you've been a small business owner for quite a long time now, and more than one business, in fact. But tell me about your background, Anna. What did you want to be when you were younger?
It's a good question. Well, I've always been creative. And actually, I went to theatre school when I was younger. And then when I left, I ended up getting a market stall on Portobello Road,
Yeah.
making some bracelets that I'd made in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And that was back in 2004. So I started on this market stall with these bracelets and actually grew into a 7-figure jewellery brand pretty quickly, would you believe? After being stocked in places in big stores. After about 3 months, I got into Harvey Nicks and then Harrods and then Selfridges, and ended up selling internationally, all over Japan and America and Dubai, and had a show on QVC. So it's been nearly 22 years in business, and I have absolutely experienced, the whole spectrum of fast business growth. As I said, to large sales figures, doesn't mean profit. Massive cash flow pressure. As I said, I scaled internationally, and I have also had some very challenging personal years after navigating a long drawn out divorce and unfortunately domestic abuse while raising my 3 children. So what I've essentially learned through all of this, I kind of called it not that I want to put a massive downer on it, but I did call it my decade of doom. But actually, I've learned so much through this period. And what I've learned is that business strategy on its own just really isn't enough. And I've learned that if your nervous system is constantly in survival mode, then all the decisions that you make are coming from from fear. So whether that might be, I don't know, in my case, over expanding, overselling, underpricing, saying yes to the wrong partnerships because you want to get the sales in. And interestingly, I've learned so much from this that now, alongside my jewelry brand, I actually work very closely on my own and clients' nervous system regulation, and I do trauma-informed coaching, I do retreats, I do workshops, and I help high-functioning entrepreneurs actually build success, but actually from a place from regulation rather than stress, because anyone can follow a strategy, but half the time it's not the strategy that lets them down, it's their regulation that lets them down.
Yeah. So let's just go back a little bit then. So you started the jewellery brand over 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
And you said you scaled very quickly. How did that come about, Anna? Who was it that kind of spotted you and catapulted you on that journey?
Yeah. I mean, it was literally luck. It was a buyer from Harvey Nichols just came by the store.
Wow.
And after about 3 months and just said, could you come and see me? I love your bracelets. And I was like, I've never actually been into Harvey Nicks in my life. And I ripped up with my poncho and my wheelie case. And I was really, really naive. And and basically she said, oh, I just love them all. I'll buy them all. And then a few weeks later, she said, we sold out. Can I see your next collection? And I didn't really know what she meant. So I just made some necklaces and earrings, and they sold. And everything just, went from one thing to the next. And in the end, I had a concession in Topshop, and I had a shop in Carnaby Street. But I was massively overselling. So, I had too much stock, and I was young and inexperienced. But, I would say that I'm a very experienced entrepreneur because I've been through the highs and the lows.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about how that affected your health then, and how you kind of pivoted into the wellness sector as well as the jewellery?
Um, I I mean, I knew that it was not going to be sustainable to manage to basically manage the business and manage what I was going through at the same time. But I
Mm.
knew that the business was my purpose. You know, I absolutely loved what I was doing, and obviously wanted to continue. I was a hands-on mum um, at the same time, and I just got I just got the codes, I just got the messages, I just knew, like, when you're hanging on by your fingernails,
Mm.
and I completed a trauma informed um ICF CPD like training,
Mhm.
accreditation training, because I realized that I just needed to know what was going on in my body. I
Mm.
knew that resilience and bravery and courage and all of those lovely words weren't enough, and mindset, it just wasn't enough. And I knew that it was, it was my, um, I needed to find more of a coherence between my mind and my body, which is what I did.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about how you help other people now. When did you start the wellness side of your business?
Um, it was about 5, 6 years ago, maybe even longer, but actual business side of things. I actually wrote some kids' books and a children's TV show called
Yeah.
Anna Lou and Friends. I don't know if I've mentioned that to you actually. Um, but that was all about nervous system regulation as well for children, because I knew that my kids didn't have um, the books just there was nothing that I could find that
Yeah.
was suitable for what they were actually going through as little ones.
Mm.
So I thought, well, myself and Sonoko, so Sonoko is somebody I've worked with. She's an amazing illustrator and does graphics for my business now, and she's amazing. We decided to create this animation together.
Mm.
So it's one thing that leads to another. So it went from sort of children's TV, and then help supporting other business owners. Um, and I think when you've got lived experience, you absolutely, like, as an entrepreneur, as a creative, as a survivor, and it just me, it just it just flowed,
Mm.
and
Mm.
when things aren't flowing, and I know when things aren't flowing and when things aren't feeling aligned,
Yeah.
and and just that I actually call it Zen hustling now. So I don't hustle, I understand more about patterns and trauma patterns and business patterns and over functioning and you know um and also what the workaholism part that can pop up when we're going through stuff to
Mhm.
hide behind work. So there were um so many different areas that I just appreciated that uh, you know, I I had an affiliation with, I knew that I could help people with,
Mm.
and a language for,
Mhm.
that just wasn't time management, or just wasn't, um, something completely cerebral. It was, you know, happening in my body, and I was able to sort of share that with other people as well.
Yeah. So tell me about how you work with other people. How do they find you for a start?
So I have a website, so Anna Lou Wellness, and I also have my Instagram and LinkedIn, and I share. I also do the networking, so in-person networking. So I do like women's circles. I host a women's circle um, on Twickenham Green on Tuesdays actually, which is amazing, and it's actually where a lot of people come. It's called the returning circle. So
Mm.
it's to help people sort of understand a bit more about nervous system regulation and have some, restorative time as well to find clarity. And actually, quite a few of uh, my one-to-one clients or retreat clients, workshop clients, they actually come from the work from
Mm.
that session.
Yeah.
So it's a really lovely thing, and it's donation only, so it's open to anyone,
Yeah.
that needs to come. So it kind of ticks lots of boxes. It ticks the the box that means anyone can come, which is what I want. I want it to be, not exclusive as
Hmm.
such, um, educational, but also, inclusive, all of those lovely things. And it just feels like it's part of my, it just aligns with what I want to do as well.
Yeah. So what kind of
That makes sense.
issues do you find that people come to you with? What are people needing help with?
Um, Interestingly, most of the time they think it's their strategy that is the problem.
Mm.
However, it's not the strategy, but I have to be careful with the language that I use, because if I go too far down the sort of spiritual woo-woo language, people are a bit like, no, 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 I want to go back to strategy.
Yeah.
But actually, what actually happens is what they're saying, the things that are coming up are all regular. Most of 99.9% of the time, they're to do with their nervous system,
Mm.
stopping them, blocking them. Um, and it's because they're not slowing down to listen, be, breathe, observe what's going on, what are the patterns, what are the loops. And, it's that they're quick to say, oh, I need a better strategy,
Hmm.
or a better marketing person, or a better this, or a better that. Or when actually it, they just haven't, they don't trust their bodies as such. They're
Yeah.
just feeling a bit dysregulated when
So
they don't actually realize it.
tell me how you work with them.
Um, So, the way I work with them, it varies. One of my clients at the moment, we are doing, she's, she particularly wants to do the somatic work at the same time as start her business, her new business.
Mm.
She's a psychic, so she understands the kind of spiritual language, which is great. But I've also got another client who is, um, she's not quite so into the spiritual side of things. So I have to, work much more as if it's about strategy, but it's not really about the strategy. It's actually, do you know what I mean? Just like use the different language. But we do lots of nervous system regulation work, basically. So sometimes it's breath, sometimes it's questions, it's messaging, it's story, asking about their stories, their like what stories they can talk about with their business that they feel comfortable with. It's showing up. It's we work on, what's the other things? A lot of people get, which is interesting because they get that fear, the sort of online social media fear, like comparison,
Mm. Yeah.
everyone's doing better. Whereas actually, this is what I was thinking, about, I love about networking, is that instantly, when you meet somebody in person, you you can co-regulate with that person straight away. You feel much safer. You can build trust faster. Decisions happen quicker. But then what happens is a lot of people, they go onto social media and then they're like, I don't really know how to get my message across. I don't know how to read, like get the right customer to, or the right person to understand my messaging.
Mm.
Whereas actually in person, you get that quite quickly.
Mm.
You can understand, like if somebody's, you can get the facial expressions. You
Yeah.
can you can, the tone of voice, like the interest, you can actually build relationships a lot quicker.
Yeah. And how important is networking to you?
I mean, it's the biggest part. I guess it's the biggest part of my business. I'd say that really every major turning point in my business has come from being in a room, not on a screen.
Yeah.
So, every meeting um, that I've had, every meeting that I've had that's resulted in a big order, I guess, especially with jewellery, um, or a new client, it has genuinely come from being in a room as opposed to just having a book a call online.
Yeah.
I mean, that does work some, but for me, it's definitely worked better in person.
Yeah. So when you go to an in-person meeting, how do you introduce yourself to someone? What do you mention first, the coaching or the jewellery?
Do you know what? I actually do both. I actually do mention both, but um, I used to call myself, hi, I'm Anna Lou, I'm a jewellery designer. But actually now I don't. Now I sort of, I say I'm Anna Lou and I'm a spiritual and business coach because I had a jewellery business for over 20 years. And I've got lived experience of navigating personal trauma or whatever. I don't know,
Mm.
whatever I say to people, but definitely I do bring both in. I overlap both things.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you think, with all your experience, your background, how do you think people could network better?
I think a lot of people worry that they worry that when they go into a room, people are going to be judging them, or they're shy. And I actually don't think it's shyness. I think it's, again, the nervous system regulation. I don't think it's anything to do with shyness. Um, it's because their nervous system thinks that they're not safe.
Mm.
So, but a lot of people think that it's because they're shy, or they'll say that it's because they're shy. But
Yeah.
actually, I've learned that, if you are networking from a dysregulated place, it is terrifying, and
Mm.
it would be terrifying. So, and I've been there, I've been dysregulated, and I know when I'm dysregulated. But I've learned that I had to just check in. I had to do some breath work. I do my own. We all have different things work for different people, but regulation practices, grounding rituals, whatever it takes. Um, because actually, once you can get yourself into a good place and ready to, be as aligned or as grounded as possible, then it's just amazing, because it really creates amazing. If you're in the right room, it will
Hmm.
create a real feeling of belonging, and you could, like I said, you can quickly read the energy. You can trust your intuition. It feels buzzy. It feels alive. You can build all these amazing long-term partnerships. Um, and it also reminds you that why you're in business, because it's about relationships, isn't it?
Mm. So, are there any simple tips you can give us for people who are feeling nervous about going into a networking meeting?
um I would say, I did some this morning, as I said. So I would say a few minutes of breath work. So, just making that out, exhaling. I actually was wearing my necklace today that says exhale, which which it's a good little reminder, just to exhale
Mm.
and just calm the breath. And I also think name what your intention is, not what the outcome is that you want.
Mm.
So the intention of going. So yeah, regulating before you go in. Um, and sometimes people are like, and I've done this before. In fact, earlier I was doing something, and then I was like, oh gosh, I've got to get that done. I've got to finish this. And you're feeling a little bit frazzled, but it's just making sure that you've got 15 minutes before you arrive to, even if you park the car a bit further away, and just have that longer walk,
Mm.
just to, calm the nervous system. And during it, I would suggest, um, like, coming away, rather than thinking, right, I'm going to have loads of business cards, is thinking I'm going to have three amazing conversations,
Hmm.
not 30 business cards that mean nothing.
Yeah.
Not that, and listening more than pitching,
Yeah.
and just really noticing where you're tightening in your body. But that takes a bit of practice, just listening. In fact, that's what we do in the returning circle, really, is practicing listening to your body. Is the time. That's the time that that's why they enjoy that, because it's a good practice just to listen to what's going on
Yeah.
internally,
Yeah.
to your inner
I think those are all great tips, Anna. So,
world.
my final question is, if people want to know more about you, your jewellery, your coaching, where is the best place for them to find you?
So, as I said, the Instagram, so at Annalou Wellness, and LinkedIn, Anna Scaife, Scaife. and in person. So if people want to come to the Returning Circle in Twickenham, it's on every Tuesday between 2 and 3 p.m. And then I also do retreats and workshops on my houseboat. So I live on a houseboat on the Thames, and it's I do them once a month. So it's open for 7 people once a month.
Sounds fabulous. Thank you very much for being my guest, Anna.
It's an absolute pleasure, Liz, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.